Well, nothing will mess with your retirement confidence like trying to compare with someone else, your brother, a neighbor, maybe somebody you watched on YouTube that said they retired at 35. Well, we had a question that came in today that inspired this conversation of whether or not you're behind with just $1 million. If you're not in the same stratosphere as those around you, are you still going to be okay for retirement? We'll talk about that coming up next. Welcome into Dollars with Dennis. I am Ben George with Dennis Hoare, Faith 401k and Money Management. Dennis, comparison, never a good thing, is it?
It does not work. There's as many different situations for people's money as there are fingerprints, I believe.
I love that. That's so true. And that's why we want to dive into this today. This whole idea of, hey, can I retire with only $1 million? So here's the question that inspired this discussion. And then we'll get into it a little bit with Dennis. So I thought I'd done a good job of saving over the years, but it seems like I'm probably behind where I should be. My brother has nearly 2 million saved. And it seems that most of my colleagues at work are in a similar stratosphere. But my husband and I are barely over the $1 million mark, and we're now in our early 60s. What should we be doing to get caught up? So before we kind of answer that question of getting caught up, Dennis, let's just talk about that real issue of comparison, why that doesn't actually equal planning.
Yeah. So if somebody has $2 million and they're spending $500,000 a year, that $2 million is not going to last very long. If you have $1 million already and you're spending $20,000 a year out of it, it could last indefinitely for you to do this. So what are you comparing to? What's the real need for you? And that's why planning is such a huge issue and importance for people to have, because everybody's going to have a different dollar amount need in retirement because everybody's spending habits, everybody's wants and needs are different. Comparing it just gets you in a bad mood.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be in that bad mood. And look, that's a good point too, Dennis, because everybody's going to be doing better than you, right? No matter how successful you are, there's always somebody out there that's more successful, which is why you can't compare. The real conversation is about trying to figure out what's enough for you. So let's get into that a little bit. What are some of those factors that help you determine what number you're going to need?
Yeah. So just trying to reframe the question. So what's your desired lifestyle? You know, what do you want to do in retirement? Is what is that going to cost? You know, we always ask people for a budget, which is probably the wrong word to use. Just what are you spending every month, and try to get a list of that, because what you spend in retirement is not going to be a lot different than what you did getting there. You know, maybe there's something gets paid off, your house gets paid off, stuff like that. But really, what are your fixed expenses, and what do you want to do in retirement? And then what reoccurring financial commitments do you have? So there are things coming through every time. And then my favorite is longevity. You know, so. And we'll touch on this in a later subject about turning on Social Security, but longevity is an important factor, and we're playing God a little bit because we're guessing, but there's some key factors that we can look at to say, do we think we're going to live longer or less time? And so we got to have that longevity factor assessment, I guess, if you will, to do that. And then do some people want to leave a legacy? They want to fund the next generation and so forth. And somebody was in a couple of weeks ago, just he wants to throw the check out to the undertaker on his way out and hopes it bounces, you know, spend the last dollar on his way out of here and do that. So every spectrum, but we really want to have some balance in there with a good written plan that we can adjust as your life changes and adjust with those changes.
So you can see there's a lot that goes into it, right? It's not a very easy equation to run through and a number to come up with, which is why you work with a professional, right, that does this every day, that knows every little factor they need to be taking into consideration to get your full picture and understand what number is going to be best for you. And again, to make that clear for you so that you understand as well what you're going to need in the plan that you're going to work with. Because really, it comes down to, right, in this situation, are you actually behind, or do you just assume that you're behind? And I'm sure you've probably seen this with clients that have come into your office where they assumed one way or the other, right? They either assumed they were way behind or way ahead. You know, this is kind of where you come in. Can you kind of take us into one of those conversations and kind of how do you help maybe somebody identify their realistic situation and kind of how you help work through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do get that a lot. And just having somebody, because they listen to their coworkers or their brother or whatever, and who has money, and they come in, they're a little bit embarrassed. I think we're behind. We don't have I don't think we're ready to get there for retirement, and we only have a short period of time to go through. So we sit down and start going through what their goals are, what their needs are, and what they do have. And many times we get done with the process, and it's not a horrible planning process. We're just collecting data and trying to put in some assumptions to figure out, do we have enough money going forward? And been many times when we go through that whole process of getting the plan put together and showing people where they're going to get money from in retirement, how it's going to work, and how much it lasts, we get the opposite effect. Well, I didn't know I'd have that much money, and then they're pleasantly surprised that they can retire, but they have they have to put in a little bit of time in the front end to make sure that we have good data, we have good information, and we just use long-term assumptions to get there. And critical part to that, and forget to mention, is the annual checkup review, because things in your plan will change year after year. So we want to sit down and look at where you are and what happened in the past year that's different. And so we can make adjustments to the plan now, not 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is always changing, right? So what may work for you now might not in a year or so, which is why you want to be staying on top of it and making changes as soon as possible if you need to, right? It's going to make it easier to course correct if needed. Let's get into this question just a little bit here before we close it out then, Dennis, because for someone that maybe is in this position and actually is behind to this person's question, and they ask about catching up, what are some of the strategies that they can maybe consider, or some things that maybe you would recommend or work with clients on to maybe help catch up if they are behind in their 60s?
Yeah, so when we go through that planning process, we can pretty much isolate those areas and say, okay, you have 4 years to go till you think you're going to retire. Can we max out your retirement plans and get more money set aside, save taxes longer, and go through that with the 401k, with the IRAs, HSAs, health savings accounts are a big thing needed in retirement today. And you mentioned Roth in an earlier session, Roth IRAs, and having tax-free money in retirement is also a good thing. But maxing out the things there, delay retirement. Sometimes people might work another year or two. Good thing is we seem to be living longer and healthier in retirement. I hear somebody say that the new 65 is actually 75, and maybe that's a stretch, but we are living longer. So there might be the opportunity to work a little bit longer than you had planned on originally. Maybe a small reduction in your lifestyle, make some changes, and instead of playing playing golf 5 days a week, maybe you only play 3. But some small adjustments in your lifestyle. But also sometimes we got to reassess our risk tolerance and how we're invested, because if you're just not going to have enough money the way you're invested, maybe you got to consider taking on some more risk, or just the opposite, taking less risk to be more safe. And then we have some people that will go ahead and retire because they're just fed up with what they're doing, but find a part-time job that can give them a supplement in retirement to help get over the lack of savings that they have. And sometimes that doesn't take, and we can help identify all those and review all those situations and go from there. It's a good problem to have, a good exercise to go through. Retirement planning is not painful. It does take a little bit of effort on their part and ours, but it's so much peace of mind comes with knowing what you can do and can't do, and if you're on track or if you're not. And if you're not on track, what can you do to fix it? And that's the whole idea behind a written financial plan.
Yep. And everyone's story is different when it comes to finances. And you want to stop comparing and begin that planning process, go to 401k.faith. As you can see, there's a lot of ways to answer this question, right? Is first identifying your number, but then also there's a lot of different things you can do if needed to get to where you need to be able to retire, to have that financial freedom that you've always dreamed of. But it all begins with planning. So make sure you take that next step, especially as we head into the new year. Get in touch with Dennis, 401k.faith. All right, that'll close us out here on another episode of Dollars with Dennis. We appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We'll talk to you again soon.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA SIPC.